The glass of water hit her like a slap, icy droplets cascading down her face, soaking her blouse, and pooling on the diner's checkered floor. The pregnant woman froze, her hands instinctively cradling her swollen belly, as gasps rippled through the crowded room. The waiter, a wiry man with a sneer twisting his lips, stood unapologetic, his eyes glinting with disdain. "You don't belong here," he spat, loud enough for every patron to hear. The woman, drenched and humiliated, felt the weight of every stare, the sting of judgment burning hotter than the water was cold. But what the waiter didn't know, what no one in that small-town diner could have guessed, was that she was no ordinary woman. She was Lena, the wife of a biker whose name alone sent shivers through the toughest crowds, a man whose love for her burned fiercer than any engine roaring down the highway. And in that moment, as the water dripped from her chin, Lena's heart didn't break, it ignited. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of standing up for what's right, please hit that like button, drop a comment, share this story, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts. Let's spread the message that love and resilience always triumph. Lena had always been a paradox, soft as a summer breeze yet forged in fire. Growing up in a rough neighborhood on the outskirts of a dusty Nevada town, she learned early that survival meant wearing your strength like armor. Her mother, a single parent who worked double shifts at a laundromat, taught her to hold her head high no matter how hard life pressed down. By 16, Lena was sneaking out to watch the local biker crews race through the desert, their engines howling like wolves under the moon. That's where she met Jace, a towering figure with a leather jacket and eyes that saw straight through her defenses. He wasn't just a biker, he was the leader of the Iron Vipers, a crew known for their loyalty to each other and their defiance of anyone who crossed them. Jace saw Lena not as a girl from the wrong side of town but as a queen, fierce and unbreakable. They fell in love under starlit skies, promising each other a life where no one could tear them apart. Now, 8 years later, at 24, Lena was 6 months pregnant with their first child, a daughter they'd already named Hope. But that day in the diner, as the water dripped from her hair, Lena felt anything but hopeful. The diner, Rusty's Roadside, was a local staple, its neon sign flickering like a dying star on the edge of Route 50. Lena had stopped there on her way back from a prenatal checkup, craving a slice of their famous cherry pie to soothe the ache of a long day. She'd ridden into town on her own motorcycle, a sleek black Harley Jace had customized for her, its chrome gleaming under the midday sun. Her pregnancy made riding trickier, but Lena refused to give it up. It was her freedom, her rebellion against a world that always seemed to want her smaller. She'd parked, smoothed her leather jacket over her belly, and walked into the diner, unaware that her presence would spark a fire. The waiter, a man named Carl with a chip on his shoulder and a history of grudges, saw her and decided she didn't fit. Her leather, her tattoos peeking out from her sleeves, her unapologetic stride, they marked her as an outsider in his eyes. When she asked for a table, his sneer grew, and when she politely requested water instead of soda, something in him snapped. The glass he threw wasn't just water, it was a message: "You're not welcome here." Lena's first instinct was to fight back. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from a fury that coiled in her chest like a rattlesnake. She wanted to grab Carl by his greasy apron and make him regret his cruelty. But the weight of her pregnancy anchored her. She thought of Hope, the tiny heartbeat she'd heard just hours ago at the doctor's office, and the promise she'd made to Jace to keep their daughter safe. So, instead of lashing out, Lena stood, water pooling at her feet, and met Carl's eyes with a look that could have burned through steel. The diner was silent, every fork paused, every whisper hushed. Some patrons looked away, ashamed, others stared, waiting for her to crumble. But Lena didn't crumble. She turned, her boots leaving wet prints on the floor, and walked out, her head high, her heart pounding with a vow: this wasn't over. Outside, the desert heat hit her like a wave, drying the water on her skin but not the anger in her veins. She climbed onto her Harley, her hands steady despite the storm inside her. As she rode home, the wind whipping through her hair, Lena replayed the moment over and over. She wasn't just humiliated, she was targeted. Carl's act wasn't random, it was a power play, a way to put her in her place because of who she was, how she looked, and maybe even because of the life growing inside her. The thought made her grip the handlebars tighter. Lena had faced judgment before, whispers about her being a biker's wife, assumptions that she was trouble just because she rode with the Vipers. But this was different. This was public, cruel, and aimed at her vulnerability. By the time she reached the small house she shared with Jace, a whitewashed bungalow surrounded by sagebrush, her anger had hardened into resolve. She wouldn't let Carl's cruelty define her, but she also wouldn't let it go unanswered. Jace was in the garage when she pulled up, his hands blackened with grease as he worked on his bike. One look at Lena's face, still flushed from the ride and the memory of the diner, and he dropped his wrench. She told him everything, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the hurt. Jace's jaw tightened, his fists clenching as she described the water hitting her, the sneers, the silence of the crowd. He wanted to ride to Rusty's right then, to make Carl feel the weight of his mistake. But Lena stopped him, her hand on his arm, her voice firm. "This isn't your fight, Jace. It's mine." She wasn't asking for revenge, she was demanding justice, her way. Jace, who'd seen her face down worse than a petty diner waiter, nodded, his love for her outweighing his instinct to protect. Together, they planned, not for violence but for something stronger, a way to show the town, and Carl, that Lena was no one's victim. The next morning, Lena returned to Rusty's, but not alone. The Iron Vipers rode with her, their bikes rumbling like thunder across the desert. The sight of a dozen leather-clad bikers pulling into the diner's lot turned heads before they even stepped inside. Lena led the way, her belly proud under her jacket, her eyes locked on the door. The Vipers weren't there to intimidate, they were there to support, to show the town that Lena wasn't just a biker's wife, she was family. Inside, Carl paled as Lena approached the counter, her presence commanding the room. She didn't raise her voice or make a scene. Instead, she placed a folded piece of paper on the counter, a letter she'd written the night before, addressed to the diner's owner. It detailed Carl's actions, not with anger but with clarity, describing the humiliation and the harm of judging someone for who they are. She'd also posted it online, tagging the diner and sharing her story with the world. By noon, the post had spread, comments pouring in from strangers who'd faced similar cruelty, from mothers who understood her protectiveness, from bikers who saw her as one of their own. The diner's owner, a gruff but fair woman named Margie, read the letter and called Carl to the front. His excuses stumbled out, but Margie wasn't having it. She fired him on the spot, not because of the Vipers' presence but because Lena's words had cut through the noise. Margie apologized, her own eyes wet with shame for what had happened under her roof. But Lena didn't want apologies, she wanted change. She asked Margie to host a community event, a fundraiser for a local women's shelter, a place where people like her, judged and pushed aside, could find support. Margie agreed, and the Vipers volunteered to help, turning the diner into a hub of music, food, and stories of resilience. Lena spoke at the event, her voice steady as she shared her experience, not as a victim but as a woman who'd chosen to rise. The crowd, once silent bystanders, cheered, some with tears in their eyes, as hope kicked inside her, a reminder of why she fought. Weeks later, Rusty's was transformed. The fundraiser had brought the town together, and Lena's story had sparked conversations about kindness, prejudice, and the courage to stand tall. Carl, humbled and jobless, left town, but Lena didn't dwell on his downfall. She focused on the future, on hope, on Jace, on the community that had begun to see her not as a biker's wife but as a force of change. As she rode home one evening, the sunset painting the desert gold, Lena felt a peace she hadn't known in months. She'd turned pain into purpose, not with fists but with heart, proving that strength isn't just in fighting back, it's in standing up, again and again, for what matters. If this story touched your heart, if Lena's courage moved you, please hit that like button, share this video, and subscribe to Gentle Hearts. Let's keep spreading stories of resilience and love that remind us all to be kinder, braver, and stronger together. Before we end, I have a special request. Please drop a comment below and share what this story meant to you or how you've seen kindness triumph in your own life. Your words could inspire someone else, just like Lena did.